What's up, everybody? It's Friday afternoon, and that means the listener questions live time. We've already heard from a number of you before hitting the air, so we're going to get to as many questions as we possibly can here on this great, at least where I am. It's a beautiful day outside Friday. John, I hope it's pretty nice out your neck of the woods. What's going on? How are you?
It's solid in Cincinnati here. It's like 50 something degrees. I think it's supposed to be cold. It for those who are uninitiated, it's I think the fourth setting or season in Cincinnati right now. It's it's second winter. We just had fall spring. So now we're in second winter. They'll probably last a week or two, but then we'll start to get some more consistent sunshine here in the coming days. So just battling through just a couple more cold fronts here and there.
I gotcha. Well, he's John Sheeran. I'm Anthony Kazenza. We are the duo who heads up the Orange and Black Insider, part of the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. And of course, if you are new here, welcome. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's a little icon underneath that Cincy Jungle logo behind or underneath John, rather. So you can click on that and subscribe. Click the bell to be notified when we go live, when new content is available. Give the video a thumbs up if you like what we're doing. That would be appreciated. And of course, we, as I mentioned, are part of the Cincy Jungle podcast channel, which also includes the Orange is the New Black, the podcast from Mason Zim, as well as Coach Speak and Chalk Talk from the coach Matt Minnick. And you can get that on all of your favorite audio streamers: iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or I guess it's just Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, all the major ones were there. So go check it out and subscribe if and how you can. We're going to be getting to some live questions, and you could submit those a number of different ways. Looks like my boy John's already getting the high noon going at 4 p.m. I love it. I'm jealous. I'm three hours behind. I can't quite hit happy hour yet. But
that's basically high noon for you, is it not?
Yeah, actually, that would be an appropriate drink. My neck of the woods. That's right. We're gonna get to a lot of live questions a number of different ways. You can email us, theobinsider@gmail.com. We've got live chats running in our YouTube channel as well as the Cincy Jungle Facebook page, so you can hit us up in either one of those. You can tweet at us at Bengals OBI, at Cincy Jungle. We'll kind of be monitoring our own personal Twitter accounts as well. There's a live post on cincyjungle.com. And of course, you can call or text 949-542-6241. No excuses. Play like a champ. Get your questions in. We'll get to as many as possible. John, do you want to bat lead off, or do you want me to? What are you thinking?
I'll let you go first, man.
Okay. Let's do the old text line. This is from Wayne in Streetsboro. If the Bengals decide to draft a wide receiver late in the draft, what kind of wide receiver would or should they target? A burner that has kick return skills, a possession wide receiver, or a wide receiver with catch radius and size?
Speed. They need that. They need more of that. Outside of Chase, I think Higgins is fine. His deep threat, he's developed well in that area, but they need some speed in case, God forbid, Chase misses some games. That's been a talking point. What happens if one of these guys misses an extended period of time? It becomes a dynamic duo, whoever the duo is, but ideally you don't want to lose any element of speed that you have on the perimeter, and they need someone on the outside. They need to basically replace Auden Tate's roster spot, and preferably you would want to do that with someone that brings something similar to what Jamar Chase has, and that's a rare talent, but you can find receiving talent all over the draft, and might as well just invest a burner in the 4th or 5th round. Nothing wrong with that.
I'm in agreement with you. I mean, one side of common sense would tell you something that, if you're going to maybe let Auden Tate walk, you would then maybe try and find another receiver of similar mold. But that receiver of that mold didn't really see the field very often in this offense. So I think, to your point, you got to get someone that has some sort of special teams value as a kick returner, punt returner, that sort of thing. Bring some competition to that aspect. I mean, the Bengals, I think, are getting Brandon Wilson back from that injury and whatnot, so they may feel like they're a little bit set. But, you probably want some speed and special teams ability. And while, you would say, well, you want to replace Auden Tate with that size and catch radius, yes, but that size and catch radius in Zach Taylor's system never really saw the field very often, be it from injury or just not effective in the system. So Yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I think speed and special teams ability is key if the Bengals are to target a wide receiver, which I do not believe will happen until, like you said, like day 3 in the draft.
Yeah, and you already have your three. I think your three starters all have phenomenal catch radiuses and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. So you need to diversify that position group a little bit. Let's go to Haas Hawkins in the YouTube chat. Let's answer his question real quickly first. If you had to choose who you are trading for, Laramie Tunsil or La'el Collins, just real quickly, Anthony, who are you taking there? And then we'll expand on the second guy that he mentioned.
I think just for the sake of providing yourself a little more flexibility as a team and what you want to do in free agency, I think I would go Collins, and I think that you've got a bigger issue at right tackle alone. I mean, left tackle still there's a lot of good moments with Jonah Williams. There's also some growth that needs to be shown yet again in this next year as a left tackle. And in that, when you bring in a Tunsil, you would put him at left tackle. So you got a new guy at left tackle. Then you would move Jonah Williams to right tackle. That's a position he hasn't played since high school, maybe a little bit at Alabama. So I mean, you're kind of asking him, yeah, it's a tackle spot, but it is different. And you're mixing things up at two different positions there. Whereas, maybe a little bit more continuity and the more palatable contract for Collins in terms of what the Bengals would have to give up potentially to get a Collins as opposed to a Tunsil. All of that makes a little more sense. And then that gives them a little more flexibility salary cap wise for this year to do some things in free agency with a Collins as opposed to a Tunsil. That's just my take.
Yeah, it's Collins by mile for me. They need a right tackle more than a left tackle. They have Collins under contract for, I think, at least one more year. He's much more affordable, and you're not giving as much up for him. Now, let's just talk about La'el, because I know that's not going to be the last question that we get from him. There was reported yesterday via Ian Rappaport that the Cowboys are having active trade conversations centered around starting offensive tackle La'el Collins, sources say. A mainstay since 2015. Collins is due $10 million this coming year, and there is interest from other teams. So let's start with the contract situation. He has 3 years left on his deal, and it's basically just 3 payments of $10 million each. And this is important from a salary cap perspective because the cap hits are all $10 million, which is fine. They're not rising due to the rising cap, so it's just like a fixed flat payment for 3 straight years. But also, if a team is taking on this contract, they're just paying him $10 million in cash this year. And if you compare that to, say, an offensive lineman that you sign in for agency this year at that same $10 million AAV, your cash in year one is going to be much higher than $10 million to pay that salary in year one. You got the signing bonus, you got a roster bonus probably in there somewhere. So not only is La'el Collins cheap from a salary cap perspective, he's cheap from a pure cash perspective, and he gives you further flexibility to add other pieces in free agency as well, just signing unrestricted free agents. So the idea of trading for La'el Collins, it just makes it makes too much sense. And if you want to feel good, Bengals fans, about this trade, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying every time the Bengals do make some type of a move at offensive tackle, it's like the most obvious move that they could make. I remember when Cordy Glenn was on the trade blog, everyone's saying the Bengals should absolutely do this, and then they ended up doing so. When Riley Reif was cut, they're like, "Oh, Riley Reif is by far the best tackle for the Bengals to sign last year. They should absolutely sign him," and then they did. It just seems like the logic is just too undeniable with this move, and the fact that it won't cost that much, not only in draft capital but also in actual cash consideration. So this probably it should happen. I don't know if it's going to happen, but it absolutely should happen.
It should. I think there's some reports about out there. I'm not going to really cite the source because I don't know how reliable some of the sources are out there that are reporting this kind of stuff. One is inclined to think that the Bengals, though, have at least reached out to Dallas to see what's going on there, what those conversations may be, what they're looking for in terms of draft capital and whatnot. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It just makes a lot of sense. And I think, again, for when you go back to Haas's question about Tunsil or Collins, it just makes a lot of sense from, a little bit of need and what you're giving up type of standpoint between those two players and just a number of other factors. So, yeah, I mean, I think that may be the team's big move there. And oddly enough, John, last week we were trying to get to one of a new segment where we were going to talk about, maybe the Billy Price trade and the whole, or the pick swap and the Cordy Glenn trade and Billy Price and that whole scenario, how it all played out. And we were kind of talking about, oh, maybe this is a Tunsil thing. And now a couple days later, it's more like, well, maybe that's more akin to what's happening here with Lael Collins and what the Bengals may do. It's just kind of funny how that played out.
Pretty much, like these scenarios, they pop up just at the right time for the Bengals. It's just a matter of if the interest is mutual, and really, like this is going to come down to I think Frank Pollock ultimately. Like I think you have Willie Anderson tweeting out like Lyle's a dog and he's going to work his ass off and stuff like that. So obviously, the Bengals still value Willie Anderson. That's why they drafted Jackson Carman in the first place. So if they reach out to him, he'll give nothing but praise to Lyle. But no one knows this kid better than, I shouldn't say kid, he's 28. No one knows this guy better than Frank Pollock. He was the offensive line coach when they brought him in as an undrafted free agent. You have to remember the whole situation with him. He was involved in a homicide investigation with his girlfriend, which is why he went undrafted in the first place. And Dallas sent like an entire recruiting brigade to bring him in from LSU, and they gave him like one of the biggest contracts in undrafted free agency history. And then he ended up as a day one starter. He actually started him, Pollock did, at left guard in the beginning of his career, and then he moved out to right tackle. So if anyone knows him better from just how he's developed into the league at this point, it's Frank Pollock. And if he wants him, then I'm sure that they're going to continue to have discussions about bringing him in.
Yeah, that was one of the most notable players in recent history. I mean, it's kind of like the Burfict thing, that a guy that had kind of first round chatter and whatnot, and then all of a sudden, for not a murder investigation, but for various reasons, fell to undrafted and then got a big undrafted contract. Bengals to land there, and then the same thing in some ways happened to Collins. And like, I wanted to ask you this on the Collins thing because that's kind of the topic of the day or the topic of the week right now. If the Bengals do not opt to sign him, do you think that then, because Pollock, you mentioned Pollock's connection there, do you think that that is actually Pollock saying, you know what, you guys probably don't want this guy, or we don't want this guy on this team, or I don't know. I mean, do you think that he has kind of a really big say either way in where this is going to go?
I think so. That's probably the biggest factor. We'll also, in all likelihood, he is going to get traded, or he's not going to be on the Cowboys anymore. And if he does get traded for compensation that's entirely in the realm of possibility for the Bengals to do, and the Bengals don't make that deal, it's almost 100% because Pollock said, yeah, we should probably pass on this. And honestly, it's not completely out of the picture. It's just the logic is lining up too well. It's just every box has to check, right? Everything has to clear in that sense. And from what little we know from the outside, it seems like that is a great possibility, but there's also an alternative reality where he may not want him. And if that's the case, then maybe you go back to saying, hey, Deontay Smith, you're the favorite to start a right tackle this year unless they draft someone in the draft. So we'll see how this goes. But I would be not shocked, but it just makes too much sense to not see this kind of go through.
There is, I think he emailed and texted Dean. Who do you see as the starting 5 O-line? Do you envision Jonah playing right tackle at all? We kind of mentioned how we're not necessarily enamored with well, I mean, it's okay, I guess, in theory, when you talk about adding a Tunsil and then moving Jonah, but there is, potential issues of, kind of playing a little bit of musical chairs there. But if you were to kind of sit here right now, Dean's asking us, obviously before free agency, before the draft, who are the 5 starting offensive linemen for the Bengals as they suit up for week 1?
Is he asking about like Jonah moving to right tackle?
That's part of the equation too. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
do you see that happening as part of the starting 5?
Not really, no, to be honest. I feel like they don't want to change every single thing there. Like, in a perfect world, I think he's been a left tackle now for 5 years. He was a right tackle in his freshman year for Alabama. I feel like if there was the chance to do that, it was when he first came into the league and they wanted him at left tackle. And again, you can move Jonah, that's fine, but you need someone to replace him at left tackle. And very rarely do solid left tackles become available for you to pick up and sign or trade for, and they don't come cheap. So the notion of moving Jonah is fine, but the process of replacing him in that regard is so much more complicated than for other positions, because the league still values that position more highly than any other offensive line position. So they got a decent one in Jonah, and I think we just got to accept that that's probably going to be the case.
Yeah. In terms of starting offensive line. I mean, it's really, really early. I guess we kind of both felt as of Wednesday, we thought there's a pretty good shot that Ryan Jensen, just based on the rumor mill and where those rumors are stemming from, that he could be the team's next center if they shell out the money. That may change if they end up shelling a little bit more money out per year for La'el Collins. They may go a little bit lower in terms of money-wise for a center. I thought Jeff Hobson recently brought up an interesting option. I think it was Brian Allen, the center from the Rams. We haven't really talked much about him. We talked about Bozeman because there's some rumors linking the Bengals to him. And then, of course, you've got Jensen. But the whole Rams connection, Rams system, McVay / Zach Taylor, and how Brian Allen potentially fits into that, maybe a more affordable option, particularly if the Bengals go a little bit heavier salary-wise, salary cap-wise at right tackle with a trade for La'el Collins.
Oh, dude, I could so see them not only signing Brian Allen, but signing him to a deal much larger than people are expecting. So what happened today, Jason Kelsey announced he's returning to the Philadelphia Eagles on a 1-year deal. He's signing 1 year, $14 million. That's technically the highest average annual value for any center in the league. There's been reports that Ryan Jensen's going to get $15 million. At some point, you have to wonder how far out of the Bengals price range is the center market going to get. And if Bradley Bozeman also takes some $14 million and Ryan Jensen takes some 15, then it becomes interesting as to whether or not the Bengals are going to sign one of those two guys. Brian Allen becomes the next best center on the market. And if they're so entrenched with the idea of getting a long-term replacement for Trey Hopkins or moving on from Trey Hopkins at that spot and getting a replacement, and then they have this money left over that they didn't use for either Jensen or Bozeman, it would not shock me in the slightest if they give Brian Allen like 4 years, 10.5 million, which might be a little bit more than what you would expect for a guy who's only like a 1 or 2 year starter, is still 26 years old, only had one good year with the Rams. But that is the type of guy that would take that kind of deal because it's probably more than any other offer that he's getting on the open market. He would accept low guarantees. He's a system fit. He's also, again, really young, so he fits in that category as well. He checks a lot of boxes as the one Bengals signing that's going to be really polarizing to the public, but in their mind, they're like, this guy's great.
Yeah. Well, we've got our good friend listener questions, Terrell. Terrell, what's going on, my man? Happy to hear from you. What's new?
Oh yeah, happy Friday. Happy to hear from y'all too. Just man, they trying to make it hard for us, man. They trying to load the AFC up, man. This is getting me worried. With Russell and Khalil Mack, I guess the NFC said, well, y'all ain't about to play over here. Y'all about to go over there. Yeah, I get it, but damn. But that man, and the La'el Collins thing, either get him or Tunsil, I believe so, man. And I'm sorry, but I really want Jonah to be a guard. Just go on and suck up the pride and be a guard, man. I want Jansen. Worst on the worst, get Bozeman. I like, if we don't get JC, I'd rather us to draft 2 corners because I don't like none of these other 25, 28-year-old, 30-year-old washed up corners they got left out here. We do need another speed receiver. And the tight end group, you know what I'm saying? Everybody wants Uzama or the Grunk back, but I really don't care for Sample. I just feel like we could do better. But I just leave out with a who day again, man. And I got so much love for you and John, man. Y'all the best, and everything.
Appreciate you, man.
Y'all gonna have a great weekend.
All right, you too. Always great to hear from you, Terrell. Take care and appreciate the compliment as always, my man. Take care. One thing I wanted to bring up that he talked about, John, was the loading up on the AFC. And, there's kind of that divisional chess match that's going on there. The Broncos trade for Russell Wilson, and then you get the Chargers, who are kind of, they just missed out on the playoffs and they're kind of trying to get all in, and they needed pass rush help, and they see who just landed in their division in Russell Wilson. They see that they have to face Patrick Mahomes twice a year, and so they land Khalil Mack in a blockbuster trade. And so where that goes with the Bengals is these are AFC teams they're going to have to contend with, especially in the postseason. But the Bengals should also take note that the Chargers kind of went all in on a big trade here to acquire Khalil Mack in an area of their team that is very deficient. They wanted another pass rusher aside from Bosa, and they went out and got him. And if you're the Bengals, you need offensive line help. You may want to take a note and say, we may need to be pretty aggressive, whether that is a Tunsil, a Collins, or what have you type of acquisition.
Yeah, on one hand, having this much talent back in the AFC is not ideal, but on the other hand, that division's brutal, and the Bengals don't play it for another 3 years, and only one or two, or I guess two, maybe three teams are going to come out of that division for the playoffs. Maybe the Bengals play one of them in the playoffs. It's tough. Like, they already faced a lot of good pass rushers this postseason run, and like that shouldn't go unsaid that they made it past Max Crosby, Yannick Ngakoue 1 week. They made it past Jeffrey Simmons and Danico Autry and Harold Landry the next, and they made it past Chris Jones. Like, facing dominant pass rushes isn't anything new, and whether or not the Chargers traded a second-round pick for Khalil Mack to put him on the opposite side of Joey Bosa doesn't change the fact that pass rush is strong in the AFC, and the Bengals need to improve their offensive line. It's a problem for everybody. It's not just the Bengals or any other contending team. If anything, like, poor one out for the Raiders, man. I don't know what the hell they're going to do. Like, they have Derek Carr. He's the fourth best quarterback in that division, but at the same time, you can't blow it up because Pat Mahomes and Justin Herbert aren't going anywhere for the next, 15 years, each of them. So, yeah, it's interesting how the Chargers, they went all in on the offensive line last year, and now they're adding one of the best defensive players in the league. And I don't think the Bengals are too concerned by matching their moves because, again, they're not in the same division. Maybe if it was the Ravens doing all this stuff, maybe the Bengals show more urgency in that. But they got to improve their offensive line regardless of what the Chargers are doing.
They do. They do. And I'm not necessarily saying that the Chargers are the ones forcing their hands per se on a move, but it's just kind of one of those things that you're seeing these teams that are close or, made a good run as of late, and they're making moves. They're making moves. So we have a little bit of surprise, John. We weren't sure if a special guest was going to join us or not. We've got him with us. The incomparable Willie Lutz. What's going on, buddy?
Dude, not a whole lot. Just got home from a busy week of work. My cat's beating the hell out of some toys over here, but other than that, the mountains are blue and
there you go.
I guess. Yeah.
My gosh, I'm just so jealous. You guys are both having a nice cocktail, and it's just a little too early for me to get there yet on my neck of the woods. But I'm jealous. Good to have you with us, Willie. It's sorry it's been way too long since we've made this happen, but glad you were able to make some time and hang out with us, answer some questions and whatnot. For those who do not know, I don't know how you wouldn't, because he's got a pretty dang big Twitter following. Willie is Bengals content creator. He's a host on the Same Old Stripes podcast and does all kinds of different stuff covering the Bengals, and is one of my favorite Twitter follows and an all-around damn good guy. So, Willie, good to have you on the show, man.
Yeah, it's nice to be here. And just for all the people out there, thank you for that nice introduction, by the way. You don't always get a nice big introduction from people, but there is a popular conception out there that I am a journalist, and I just like to clear the air. I am not a journalist. If you think anything I write is journalism, I am sorry. I am full of it all the time. So I work in marketing. So yeah, I probably do use some hyperbole and make things sound a lot like a bigger deal than they really are. But hey, if you're looking for journalism, get it from John. And I mean, you guys both know what you're doing. So don't take it from me. Take it from people that know what they're talking about. And also, I've been waiting so long that I cut off all my hair before I came on. So I guess that was the magic trick.
I was gonna say, man, where's what the flowing locks? When did that occur?
So I told my girlfriend, and I've been wanting to get it cut because normally I grow it out for 2 years and then I cut it down and grow it out for 2 years. But it had been like since my sophomore year of college that I had cut it back down. And I'm 25, so 4 or 5 years ago. And I was doing it all through high school and middle school where I was cutting my hair, growing up, the whole process. And I was like, you know what? I'll cut it after the Bengals season. So for her, it took a lot longer than she would have expected. And everyone else, it was a big surprise. But she had just been waiting and waiting and waiting until the season ended. But I'm like way too superstitious to cut my hair during the middle of a football season because that's just like the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, that's super. That's a no-no. That's a no-no. That's kind of like don't remove the rally cap thing. Well, we're gonna throw you to the fire right away, Willie, because we've got a call on the line. Charles is on the line. Charles, what's going on, bud?
Not so much. How you doing?
Doing well.
That's good. That's good. I'm out and about in snow after we had 80-degree weather last week. Now we got snow, so it sucks, but it's all right.
Well, hang in there.
But,
What's on your mind?
but yeah, it's like two things. One, I feel like of all the trades we can make, which one best fit for the Cincinnati Bengals? And two, I like Jeff Hobson, but when it comes to Bengals free agency, I don't like reading his article. So how is he a true professional? Pissed off the fan base every single year. He's done it. He's consistent at doing it, and it's hilarious. People get mad, but we got to realize that Bengals have changed over time from the last 2 years. So I feel like, how much money do you think they'll spend in free agency this year in cash?
Wow, those are all really good questions and points. We're gonna talk about it off the air, but thanks for hanging on for a few minutes there, and thanks for calling in and listening, Charles. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, take care, man. Oh boy, I was hoping we wouldn't have some Hobson slander on this one. I want to recommend everybody to go watch that video on John's Twitter account. That's just it's informative, it's calming, it's all of that. Willie will let you bat lead off here. And yes, we can use baseball terminology because baseball is back. Willie, what are you thinking about how Jeff Hobson presents Bengals free agency to the fan base? And what are you thinking trade-wise, some of the options, the best options for the Bengals, like Charles asked?
So we'll start with the Hobson thing. I'm ready to debut this conspiracy theory right now. I think the Bengals have learned to use Hobson at the beginning of free agency as their own smokescreen. I think they're really good about it. I think they're really smart about it. But if I was a football team, I would do that with my team writer for like 90% of things. Like if I could just like pump someone like some weird misinformation to like leverage myself in a trade, I would just do it because I can. And not saying that's like the ethical thing, the right thing to do, and why I don't own a football team for like a million different reasons. Well, probably several billion different reasons. But that's a whole other, I'm not a billionaire, guys. It's not a secret. But yeah, so I think, I don't really know. I don't know Hobson very well. You guys probably talk to him more than I have because I've never talked to him. He seems like a nice guy, and I trust him for the most part. Actually, not for the most part. Pretty much the dude knows what he's talking about. And
he does. Yeah.
So the one thing I will say about Hobson in particular is at the beginning of last season, the dude was riding for Eli Apple, and he was right. And no one else was on Eli Apple Island. And I heard him have some Eli. I think it was that 50 West thing with, I think it was Hear That Podcast Brown that did it. But yeah, he had the Eli Apple take, so I will forever credit that man as a football mastermind. But I'll switch to trades because I feel like that's the more pertinent conversation. But respect Hobson, guys.
I love him. I love him.
Yeah. Give him a break. What are we doing out here? But and also watch John's video because it does a good job. But trade-wise, I mean, we're to the point now where I think we all know the name that the Bengals should want, that we want. La'el Collins from Dallas, kind of. It just should be the move. Like, it's harder to come up with a reason why they wouldn't do it than why they would do it at this point. Why they wouldn't do it is like the suspension stuff, all that, whatever people want to call it. I mean, this team is in the Marvin Lewis era, looked over that stuff all the time, and it turned out all right for him on several occasions and not so well on other occasions. But again, another conversation for another day. But I mean, if you're looking for answers on the offensive line that are within your, you're within your pick arsenal to get, I just think it makes all the sense in the world. And Dallas seems to be trying to offload some salary. I mean, we're seeing the Amari Cooper stuff come out, but like, I don't know what their kind of whole prerogative is, but they definitely seem like they're trying to open up some cap space. Their line has historically been pretty good. So, I mean, unlike the Bengals, maybe they feel confident about their ability to get new names in the room and get those guys developed and all that good stuff. But that's the name. And I could sit here and I was very much on the Laramie Tunsil thing at the beginning. That doesn't really make sense. Like, it's fun to talk about, but it doesn't actually make sense. What's the other big trade person that everyone's talking about? I can't remember the other big piece that people have been saying.
What position?
You guys know what I'm talking about? I mean, Fletcher Cox came out today, but I cannot remember for the life of me if it's another lineman. But that's neither here nor there. Those are the two big names that everyone's been talking about, Tunsil and Collins. But Collins just makes all the sense in the world compared to, $10 million a year. I think he's got 3 years left on the deal or something. Someone said. I honestly didn't even look it over the cap or spell track or anything, so I can't speak to the
No,
exact
you're right.
details.
You're right.
But that's the name. That's the name for me.
I think Willie brought up a good point, Anthony. Like at this point, the Bengals have done a lot in the past, 3 years now under Zach Taylor, where they brought in enough leaders in the locker room and they've established the culture that I think they want to. And that's not really going anywhere, especially with not a lot of players leaving. So now they have an opportunity to take, I guess you can call it a risk on Lyle because they don't know him personally. The only one who does is Frank. And there's been now 4 years since he's coached Lyle. So again, it all comes back to him and what he thinks is best and if he actually recommends that. But even if Lyle does have the baggage that he does, and that's why he's not going to cost the first rounder that a lot of fans think that he is, like they can afford to inject that in there because the base of their locker room and culture is good enough where it can absorb that and it's not going to be detrimental. It's not adding another question mark in a locker room full of question marks, if you will.
John, you had mentioned the other day on our Wednesday show that what was the number you had put out in terms of cash commitments that the Bengals are gonna be spending this year? It looks, I think you said 80 million was kind of your number that you threw out there.
75, 80.
So yeah. So of that, Charles kind of also asked, and Willie, I want to get your thoughts on this too, but of that money, I mean, how much do you expect them to actually spend either in outside free agents, guys they brought in? Now, remember, in that 80, I assume that 80 also, if I remember correctly, you're talking about that includes the Trey Wayne's contract off the books, correct?
No, it actually doesn't.
It didn't include that stuff. Okay. So then we're looking at playing into that equation. We're looking at the Jesse Bates franchise tag number. We're possibly re-signing a lot of their own guys and some other stuff. So what of that? I mean, how much realistically do you see them coming right up to that number? And how much of that may be doled out to outside free agents as opposed to inside free agents?
It's going to be almost entirely outside free agents because the only way that it's not is if it's the draft. In the last 2 years, Jamar Chase got like 20 million cash up front. Joe Burrow got something close to 30. Yep. The first round pick that they have, if they're going to stay, that pick is going to be 7 million in cash. So it's 90% external free agents. The money is going to get spent. If you don't rock with Jeff Hobson, you don't rock with me. All right. The guy is a phenomenal human being. You wouldn't be saying this stuff if you actually talk to him in person. He knows what the salary cap is. He's not stupid. Okay. I think Willie's not terribly off base with this, but he's just saying what it currently is right now. They have 35 million in cap space. They typically don't spend to the cap. They have to allocate some to the draft. That's just what the current calculations are because every single year the team tells media members what the situation currently is before free agency begins. That's when this article gets dropped. He's not speculating based off of what might or probably will happen. He's only going off of what is happening. And he knows the Bengals have spent a lot of cash in the last 2 years. And based off of just their history in the last 10 years, and Andre Prada did a great job of going over this with us last year at this time. They're on track to spend at least 75 million in cash because they always spend the amount of cash as to what the unadjusted cap is. So if they're right now committed to 130 million in cash commitments, including both Trey Hopkins and Trey Waynes, they're going to spend about 210 in actual cash. That's a ton of new commitments, and they can only spend so much on internal guys because like CJ Uzama, BJ Hill, like those are going to be their biggest internal free agents if they re-sign those guys. Everything else is going to external guys, and most of those guys are going to be offensive linemen. That's just is what it is.
Yeah. I think you guys, first of all, I just got to make another little news. Did you guys see that Max Crosby just got absolutely paid?
Oh, no, I didn't.
I did not. Did that happen while we were on the air?
Yeah, 13 minutes ago from Tom Pelissero, 4-year, 98.9. Oh, they're doing the whole 98. That's kind of clever on their end. I would do that deal. I mean, I love Max Crosby. He's a stud, but Max Crosby's getting paid. So I'll go ahead and get back to Bengals free agency. I just had to drop that little news nugget in there because we're talking free agency in the house. But I mean, I've got this weird gut feeling that I think the outside money might be a little more disappointing than people expect, but that's how it is every year with this team, Like, I mean, some people are out there dropping, like they're not going to go get J.C. Jackson. They're just not. And they're not going to go out there and Armstead. It's just not going to happen. And everyone's cool with this. I don't think anyone's going to be impressed when I say this, but like The Brandon Scherf contract isn't coming. It will not happen. That is insane. What I do think, and also, I mean, I'll circle back. They're going to spend some money, and for Hobson to be as adamant, and I don't love this name. I've been pretty openly not a big Connor Williams guy, but for him to be like, yeah, like a guy like Connor Williams over and over and over again was super interesting to me because Connor Williams isn't like a, bargain bin free agent. Someone's going to pay him a good amount of money because he's young and athletic. But I mean, I just think this team looked at what they had last year and really likes a lot of the names they had in that room. It brought them to the Super Bowl at the end of the day. So would it shock me if they do a little Rob Peter to pay Paul and want to get aggressive and re-sign both BJ Hill and Larry Ogunjobi? No, that wouldn't surprise me, but that's going to take up a big cut of their dollars. But I think they kind of want to do it because they liked what that did for their pass rush. And, I think you got to pick one or the other. I mean, I think people are being a little harsh on Larry Ogunjobi because the $10 million thing came out yesterday, but he's a really good player and he deserves to get paid. But if you go with one of those guys, that's fine, and it's still going to be with plenty of money. But I'm just looking at them as a team that will re-sign a lot of internal guys. But like John said, they're going to use a lot of this money to go bring in some of those, talents like they did the last couple of years. But I think people are going to get too accustomed to what's happened the prior 2 years and expect it to happen again this season. When this season, I mean, I think they like what they have, and they're finally starting to develop some pieces that they really like in this Zach Taylor regime. And that's not something you could really say the prior 2 seasons.
Well, also with that, Willie, I think that this is an interesting debate because now they have a core of guys that got them to the Super Bowl and they want to establish some continuity with that. But at the same time, in the past 2 years, like they've done a great job of not only bringing in talent, but bringing in value, bringing in guys who have played their best football with the Bengals. And that's the exact case with both Ogunjobi and BJ Hill. Like BJ Hill was making less than $1 million on the rookie contract. Ogunjobi was making $6 million, providing pass rushing production. Like in order to keep that going, keep the talent tree expanding and being stable, like that type of outlook of going after free agents that has to maintain. Like you don't want to overpay for guys based off of past production. Their whole MO is getting guys peaking at the right time, and Trey Hendrickson's a great example too. So I think that is interesting with both of those guys. Like I think they have a price for both of them, and they don't want to overextend or pay as much as it takes possible to bring both of them back, because at the end of the day, they will spend money, but you're right. They're not going to go after the top guys. They want to get guys who they believe will bring in the most value in years to come.
Yeah,
well,
I could have said it better myself.
I'm seeing some news as well, I think, and I'm trying to confirm it. I'm seeing, not that this really has much to do with the Bengals, but it might if a team swings a trade for this player. It looks like Joshua Patterson had noted that Deshaun Watson was not charged with anything on Friday. I don't really want to get into the details of that thing because that's it's just a whole thing. But sounds like after everything was presented to a grand jury, he is not going to be indicted on any criminal charges at this point, at least. And scrolling through Twitter, it kind of looks like that. But that may bring a team like the Steelers to potentially trade for a player like that. You've got some other teams that might look at trading him, and we'll confirm if that is indeed the case with Deshaun Watson. But it looks like some news there. Yeah,
it looks like it. Yeah.
Yeah, so he will not be with the Texans by. I mean, it seems like that's a
by Monday.
Conclusion. Yeah. So I don't know if you guys had heard that or not, but it looks like that's the case.
This Schefter tweet is kind of not sitting with me well. He says, "Quote: This is why Deshaun Watson from the beginning welcomed a police investigation. He felt he knew that the truth would come out. Today, grand jury did not charge him on any of the criminal complaints." Like we already know that Schefter is just basically taking what agents and owners say verbatim as like a, I don't know, like that doesn't. He's just carrying water at that point to me.
Yeah, that's a Mr. Editor tweet right there.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that's something to, I guess, monitor with so many other quarterback situations going on around the league, and something that we've kind of got. In the news of all these other contracts and stuff, that was kind of waiting at the end of the week here. So, John, I think I picked the last one. You want to go next, or Willie, if you see one up there on the live chats, if you're able to access that, we'll grab one of those.
Yeah, let's see here. Let's go back a little bit because we've been talking for a little bit. Come on, guys. Where are your questions at? It's just a lot of discussions.
Here's one. Yeah, no, Brian in Iowa. What position do you guys predict the Bengals will draft in round one? I mean, at this point, obviously, you would say, well, offensive line, but I don't know that I really see that because I think the Bengals are going to do a lot of different things in free agency. I think you're going to maybe see a dark horse kind of position that, I think cornerback is in the mix if they don't end up paying a corner in free agency, which I don't think is going to happen. And there seems to be a number of high quality corners in this draft. And the Bengals love those first round corners. They are not shy from drafting them. So I think corner is definitely one to be in the mix, and or interior defensive line if they don't get what they want out of BJ Hill and or Larry Ogunjobi. I don't know what you guys think.
Oh, it's so hard for me to. I'm having a hard time figuring out this draft because it truly is like the first time in a long time when I could say the Bengals can. Well, not in a long time. I mean, we're talking like 5 years, but they can go best player available. And that's the tricky part because like, would they benefit if they, drafted Zion Johnson? Maybe, but I mean, you're in a spot now where you can take whatever lottery ticket you think is the one that's going to bring home the most dough. You can pick your lucky number. And a lot of the time in recent history, this team's lucky number has been a first round cornerback. I mean, Dre Kirkpatrick gave this team a lot of starts. Darquez Denard gave this team a lot of starts. William Jackson gave this team a lot of starts. Not all names the Bengals fans are going to love. I'm well aware, but it would surprise me 0% to see this team go back to the cornerback well in round one.
Yeah, that's probably. I think it's either corner or defensive tackle. Honestly, free agency is going to play a big part of it for sure. But I think you're going to see enough investment on offensive line where even like the value for offensive linemen might not be there. And again, this is 31 picks into the draft, and we have no idea how that's going to go. like typically there's like 6 or 7 offensive linemen off the board at that point, but you look at just the roster and where they need the most help. We don't know what they're going to do at cornerback. We don't know how much depth they're not going to have at defensive tackle. I think Malik Wright said that it's trending towards a defensive player being picked at that spot. They haven't picked a defensive player since William Jackson 7 years ago or 6 years ago at this point. Wow. It's always a safe bet with cornerback, but it wouldn't surprise me if they try to get a long-term replacement at 3 technique for sure.
Yeah. I snaked
it. Yeah.
No, just go ahead.
Devontae Wyatt of Georgia. If Wyatt's there at 31, I'd be shocked if that's not the pick. But I don't know how their board falls.
Yeah, I like him a lot as an option for the Bengals there at the back of round one for sure. If they're not going to go offensive line or corner, that's a guy that. And we also know the Bengals like those Georgia Bulldog players, especially on defense. Traditionally, they like to get those guys. John, I snaked your turn there last time. Did you see another one come up that you wanted to get to?
Yeah, so we had one from William Newell about half an hour ago, and we'll have Willie take this as well, just to get his thoughts on maybe potential offensive lineman free agency. He's asking, do you see the Bengals signing any free agent offensive linemen that are above the Riley Reef level? Any top tier guys is what he's saying. And this could be including Lyle, but let's just say that they don't end up trading for Collins. They have that cap and cash available. Do you if you see them with any top tier guys, who's probably on your list of guys that you're expecting?
I mean, the guys that I've heard the Bradley Bozeman thing is interesting, but I've started to wonder if that's a smoke screen. But I'm getting too conspiratorial here towards the free agency opening. Bradley Bozeman, that one I poked around a little bit, and that one seems like there is some interest. Laken Tomlinson, I've just seen like the articles and stuff that everyone else has seen. But the one that is just like, I don't know what it is, and like nothing about me as a Bengals fan feels like this should be a thing. But the Ryan Jensen thing, there's just way too much smoke with it at this point. Like, and I know that it's like terrible for this team to get like caught tampering, because this is like, if it's really as obnoxiously like an open secret as it can be, which is starting to really seem like it is. And granted, we haven't seen like a big source like say anything about it, but there's been these like, I mean, obviously the Pac-Man clip everyone heard, but I just feel like you keep hearing all this smoke about the Bengals and Ryan Jensen. And Bengal Jim put up a tweet that, like, I don't know if I love Jim, but I don't think he's like an NFL insider. He might be a Bengals insider. I know he's well connected in Paul Brown Stadium one way or another, but he was forecasting the Ryan Jensen thing earlier this afternoon. That name to me, it just like, and I don't even know if that's the name I would have at the beginning of free agency been like, that's who the Bengals should go grab. But that's the name I just feel like it would surprise me at this point if it doesn't happen. Just with all the traction I've heard and the little bit of poking around I've done, like the center market does seem to be in their taste. Like that's where they want to go. And that doesn't really surprise me knowing the struggles they've had at the center position and the occasional opportunity they've had to get aggressive with it. And obviously they drafted Billy Price, but I don't know. There's something about that one that is just, so that's obviously above the Riley Reef level.
Now hold on a second, like, because I think Jim does actually have some connections within the Bengals.
Yeah, he definitely does. Yeah.
Are you saying that he was projecting it, or he was just talking about it, like the Jensen stuff?
Go check out. Have you seen his tweet? It happened while you guys were talking, so I wouldn't be surprised. But he posted it was like 3 things he's heard, and like one of the things was like the Jensen thing is as good as done. So like if you can find that tweet, I know. I don't know what to say. Like I'm just saying what I'm reading. I'm not trying to be Mr. Source over here because that's his tweet, but
yeah,
I thought
got
that was pretty interesting.
Quote here. It says, rumors from my peeps, near lock, Bengals sign Jensen. Tons of agents reaching out to the Bengals for their clients. Bengals are in on Collins trade discussion right now. So I don't know who the hell his source is, but I know for a fact that he knows some people in the organization that would tell him some of this stuff for sure.
I mean, none of those 3 things are far-fetched though. Those are all things that are very conceivable.
Pretty much.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, and like we said earlier, I think it was a little bit before you. Here's the tweet so people can kind of see there with the crystal ball, the lady with the crystal ball there.
You could have picked a better gift, but you know.
Yeah. But yeah, near lock, Bengals sign Jensen. Tons of agents reaching out to Burrows. That's the Burrow effect. The Bengals are in on Collins to trade discussions. We said earlier that we felt like there were some sources out there talking about the Bengals being involved in discussions with Dallas about Collins. So that, but we weren't sure about the the validity of the source there. So we were kind of saying, well, we think it's happening. And I think Jim there putting it out there, I think he's probably got a good pulse on some things. But again, we'll have to see what happens here in terms of my thoughts on free agent O-lineman. My thing is this is a little bit of a shell game, or to use the phrase that you did, Willie, earlier, kind of a rob Peter to pay Paul type of thing. I don't see, I threw out a tweet yesterday about a potential offensive line configuration where it was some of the young guys, the 2 drafted guys last year, Deontay Smith and Carmen, maybe being the guards. And then you had Jensen, you had Jonah, and you had Collins. I don't see, people are like, well, Tomlinson too, and Norwell. And and it's like, I don't see them bringing in 3 or 4 new veteran offensive linemen that have high price tags. That's not the way they're going to do this thing. I could see one that has the big price tag and has a big name, maybe a Jensen, and then maybe a Collins as well. That would be big as well with that. But I could see more, again, if you go the Jensen route, that's expensive. To William's question here, I would say maybe it is a Reef level signing at tackle then at that point, whether that's a Morgan Moses, whether that's bringing back Riley Reef again, something like that, where it's kind of, you get the one big piece and then maybe you get kind of another veteran, a mid-tier guy, and then maybe a rental deal for a guy that's got some talent but is, maybe only got a year or 2 left, and you save some money that way. I don't see, Jensen and Tomlinson and Collins all in one offseason. I know the Bengals have money to spend and cap space and all of that. I don't really see them going that far into diving into outside free agency and whatnot, even if the offensive line needs a lot of work.
Yeah, I think Joshua Patterson, he had one of the first questions, and he was asking, do you think the Bengals can sign Ryan Jensen, trade for Collins, sign Lakin Tomlinson, J.C. Jackson, re-sign B.J. Hill, C.J. Zama, and Quinn Spain with just cutting Trey Waynes and Trey Hopkins? Well, short answer is no. All of that's they have money. They don't have all of the monies in the world. So I think, if Jensen is their main target, I think they're going to do what they can to bring him in as long as the price doesn't skyrocket out of control. And if they are in on Collins, again, that's a deal that I can see them taking on. those two guys I think would be the significant additions. Anything beyond that, it could be like a Ted Karras, which it could be he could sign like a deal similar to what Suafilos signed a few years back. There's other minor guys that could maybe compete for a guard spot, but I think at that point you're sacrificing a clear upgrade at guard, and you're either looking to the draft or just further developments from Smith and Carmen at that point.
The other names out there, like Feliciano, didn't he just get released? He's a guy that, maybe that's a veteran option that's out there. And like you said, you could also go the Lael Collins route. And Willie, we said this, I think, before you hopped on. It's, you could pay the decent amount of money to Lael Collins as your right tackle, but then maybe you go the Brian Allen route at center, like Hobson mentioned, as a guy that we're not talking about because he doesn't have that price tag like a Bozeman or a Jensen will. But he's a guy that you go, hey, that's, that could be a marginal improvement. That can be a guy that can bring value to your offensive line, even though it's not we're all in at every single position on the offensive line. Let's explode the needle off the charts type of thing,
I think it's a funny little mind game you can play with yourself because I think Bengals fans are well within their means to pound on the table and say, we should be better at all 5 positions on the line. We should move Jonah, their guard, and this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, I don't think you have to give Joe Burrow a top 5 line in the league for this team to have won the Super Bowl. We talked about it on my podcast for 2 seconds, but we were saying they probably win the Super Bowl with Kevin Zeitler at guard. So if you're obviously you want Joe Burrow to have more time. Obviously you want to have a great line. These things are yeah, they're givens. But at the end of the day, I'm telling you right now, if you 2 moves on the line, if you give me Jensen at center and you give me Collins at guard, and maybe even if you give me Allen at, center and you give me one of those, a Karras at guard or whatever, I don't know. I'm getting all my positions mixed up now that I'm talking. I just realized that, but you know what I'm talking about. If you just give me Collins and Jensen, and exactly what you said, you just put those 2 rookies at guard, or you bring back Quentin Spain and put him at guard. You can kind of sell me on that, and I'll get through it. And the way I kind of think about it, if you look at what Russell Wilson was able to do in Seattle with some pedestrian offensive lines, he still won a Super Bowl. He still got to 2 Super Bowls. They were still competitive every year. And I think some of the things that Joe Burrow does in the pocket where he will wait around and he'll take some hits and the interior pressure gets to him, it's very Russell Wilson-esque. And a lot of the things, you'll see from him on an occasional basis in the pocket movement, in my own estimation. Russell Wilson's a little more athletic. Russell Wilson's Russell Wilson. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He's a Super Bowl champion who's never had an MVP vote, but that's, again, going off all these side football tangents in my head today, but that's how it works over here. But I mean, I don't think you have to give Joe Burrow this top 5 offensive line. I think if you get 2, really good names, and Jensen's getting older and Collins has had injuries and he's not perfect, but if you give me those 2 names, I mean, sign me up. Just sign me up and I'm good with it.
Well, hell, he didn't need it last year. All he needed was someone better than Hakeem Adeniji. In all honesty, and that was the whole argument with if you can have a full season of decent Riley Reif, if Trey Hopkins comes back healthy, which unfortunately he didn't. Riley Reif didn't stay healthy for the entire year either. Your offensive line is good enough, and sure enough, Joe Burrow got into the MVP conversation. You just need marginal improvements across that line, and they're never going to invest defensive line money into the offensive line. They pour in millions and millions to the defensive line. That's where their priorities are. They're never going to do that with the offensive line. But at this point, this is the last truly cheap year of Joe Burrow's rookie contract. And then it probably accelerates next year when they extend him. If there's a time to do this, I think they figure that it's probably now. They just need some solid answers, and with that comes investment. But especially when Burrow is paid $50 million a year, you're never going to see them shell out big money for offensive linemen. That's their philosophy. They like to develop guys there. They don't like to shell out the big bucks. But at this point, there's just no other time to do it than now.
Right.
I mean, look at what the Chargers are doing, man. They just went out and got Khalil Mack. That's not an offensive player, but I mean, they invested offensive line money last year. So, and I think they'll do it again this year. I would not be surprised if they spend some more money to get another chip on that line. But that's not the point. The Bengals got to spend because other teams are spending and other teams are out racing them. And Russell Wilson's in this conference now. This conference is only getting stronger. I mean, we're talking about Deshaun Watson coming to this conference. So, yeah, John's right. You got to spend some damn money to make this team better.
For sure. I could see conceivably 2 mid to high level additions on that offensive line, be it Collins, be it Jensen, be it whoever. When you're saying 3, maybe even 4 mid to high level additions on the offensive line, I don't see that happening. I don't think that's very realistic. I think we're kind of entering Madden franchise mode at this point if you're going that route. So let's get to a couple more questions and we'll hop on out of here because we're getting to an hour. I'm Anthony Cosenza, joined by my usual colleague, John Sheeran. We are graced to be joined by guest host Willie Lutz. It has been far too long since we extended the invitation for him to join us, and we're happy to have him cruising along with us, answering your questions. So if you guys see a couple more either in the live chats or if you got tweeted something, let's have it, and we'll be here for a couple more minutes.
So there's one in the Cincy Jungle comment thread. It's a little bit negative, but might as well just throw it out there. From Cactus Comet, he's asking if they sign a couple of outside free agent offensive linemen, what in your estimation would be considered an unsuccessful free agent period?
That's what if they sign a couple of outside free agent offensive linemen, what in your estimation would be considered an unsuccessful free agency period? Because quite honestly, if the Bengals get some depth pieces on defense that maybe aren't huge needle movers in terms of outside free agent names, but you get one high level offensive line starter and maybe another mid-level offensive line starter, whatever that may look like. To me, that's a pretty successful offseason because I think the focus here has to be get yourself some effective veteran offensive linemen, get some depth elsewhere. You already made the Super Bowl last year with this roster largely in place. You got to figure out interior defensive line, maybe some cornerback stuff. But I mean, if you get some depth or maybe not some huge pieces on defense, but you get the 1 or 2 mid to high pieces on the offensive line, that's a successful free agency period in my estimation. What would make it unsuccessful if they do get 2 free agent offensive linemen is if those are just kind of marginal veteran journeymen, not really going to vie for a starting job, or maybe they're in the mix, but they're not the guy at certain spots. They're kind of, we brought him in for competition and they've started here and there and this and that. That to me, if they sign free agent offensive linemen, an unsuccessful free agency with offensive linemen being signed would be you sign kind of fringe starter guys and not guys that'll really, really impact your offensive line in a big way.
Willie, what about you?
It's kind of the same thing. I'll take a little bit of a different approach. I think they're kind of doing themselves a disservice if they don't get some of those guys to – man, it's even hard to say because if you give me 2 starting linemen in free agency, it's really hard to deem free agency a failure, and that's kind of what the comment implies. But I guess I'll just say I would be a little disappointed if they don't get out or go out and get some, if there's truly all this interest in guys coming to the Bengals and these veterans that have experience and are good players that want to come to the Bengals to chase a ring. I just think it'd be a little disappointing if they don't do their due diligence and go get some of those guys. Now, I even feel weird saying that because really over the Zach Taylor era, they've done a really good job plucking these kind of no name or, lesser known players and getting good production out of them. I mean, look at a guy like Joe Bacci today who re-signed for another year. I mean, he only played or a handful of games because he tore his ACL in Denver. But I mean, when he was on the field, he made some nice tackles. Clay Johnston made some nice tackles. Eli Apple came in and played most of the season and played some solid football. The dude had the lowest passer rating in man coverage or something crazy like that. I mean, so maybe I'd be disappointed. The biggest disappointment I would see is if, let's say they can't get a deal with BJ Hill done. They can't get a deal with Larry Ogunjobi done, and they don't address the 3 technique in the free agency class. That would be the biggest disappointment I could see.
Yeah, I just don't think that there is a scenario where they don't spend. It's just a matter of where that money is going. And all right, they signed 2 starters on offensive line. If one of them is Bradley Bozeman, at best, he's a marginal upgrade over Trey Hopkins. And if the other one is, I don't know, like AJ Cann from Jacksonville, like a starter, but he's not like a true upgrade in any sense of the word. And then you have 2 or 3 signings reminiscent of Trey Waynes, where it's it's money, but is it money well spent? Are you going to get value out of that? So like cap wise, they could be in the same situation as they are in every year, entering the draft with like 10 million under the cap. But is your roster that much better? Are you that comfortable entering the draft? And you might have holes filled with starters, but you're probably still looking to add depth or maybe potential upgrades in the draft at some of those positions that you address in free agency. So money is going to get spent, but I think Bengals fans are pretty good at identifying, like, are these signings wise at the time or are they not? And maybe only for Trey Hendrickson, where there are a lot of people on the wrong side of history with that, including myself. So yeah, I think the perception is going to be telling at some of these signings when they do happen. And if we don't deem them to be good players for the money, then I would consider that to be unsuccessful.
Fair enough. I guess we'll start wrapping things up. I do want to say this, and I think I know what answers you guys will give. I'm just going to kind of address the first part of this question from Austin. We already kind of talked about Devontae Wyatt. I might be in agreement with my guy Willie here. I loved the combination of BJ Hill and Larry Ogunjobi this year. When those two were out there, they provided, and it was almost like when one guy wasn't being effective, they would rotate him out and the other guy would come in and make the big play. And then when that became ineffective, the other guy would come in and make a big play. There's a lot of talk about Larry O and BJ Hill in terms of re-signing with the Bengals this year. I think it seems like for the most part, whether it's an affordability factor, whether it's a little bit more of a consistency factor, the fact that BJ Hill may have made a couple more plays against the run than Larry Ogunjobi did. Sounds like most Bengals fans want BJ Hill back if it comes down to a choice between one or the other. I think I might slightly prefer Larry Ogunjobi, and I might be in the minority of that. Willie, I think you had put some stuff on Twitter as well about being like, hey, we shouldn't really be so quick to dismiss Larry O as the lesser option per se here. So I'm kind of with you a little bit on that. And I think you and I are maybe in the minority there, but if you've got some thoughts on Larry O and why you think, I don't know if you actually think he is the better option than BJ Hill, or if you're just kind of saying, hey, both guys are good options. I don't know if you had one or the other there. What are you going with?
Oh, I know I'm going to get some grief for this, but I get the BJ Hill love. I mean, when you look at, actually, I think it was Paul Dehner from The Athletic who did a really, really good breakdown of this debate. And I think the article came out today. So you guys should check that out if you have the opportunity. But, I mean, BJ Hill has a lot of metrics where he is better than Larry. Mm-hmm. But just from a purely watching football standpoint, like, there's just something so explosive about when Larry Ogunjobi's on the field and when he's hitting, like, just getting in those gaps.
When he's on. Yeah.
Like, it's just, and you're not going to get that every game. And that's the frustrating part. Like, if you're going to pay a guy that much money, it is frustrating that it's inconsistent. But I just think, and I think I'm on your side a little bit, Anthony. I think if it was up to me, if I was doling out the money, I think I'm going to go the Larry Ogunjobi route. And I love BJ Hill. I would love to have both of them back, but that's just my preference. But it's a really good debate either way. But I think I have more of an issue with people just offhandedly dismissing Larry Ogunjobi as an option. I think so many people have just been very quick to be like, no, BJ Hill. And I think a lot of it's based on, and this is a fair reason, like, BJ Hill was in every game up to the Super Bowl and into the Super Bowl. And, he had the pick or interception of Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. Huge play. Like we can't undersell that play. Like, it was amazing. Huge play, changed the course of this team's, destiny, really opened that game up in the second half. But I don't know, man. I just think there's a special quality about Larry Ogunjobi that I don't think BJ Hill has. And I think that's just it for me. It's just a little bit more explosiveness, maybe. And maybe I'm wrong, and that's okay, but that's just how I feel about it. And I think a lot of people have just dismissed that $10 million thing and just been like, he's done.
Well, no, I think that's objectively correct, which is why I think he's going to be more expensive, because teams value that explosion. They value that athleticism at the position, because that is how most guys get the production, right? And the whole thing with Larry is that I said this back in October, like, he's the 40 home run guy with a batting average under 200.
I love that comparison.
That's literally him, because he misses a ton of tackles. He over pursues sometimes, but he's in the backfield a lot. And he's probably in the backfield a lot more than BJ Hill, because BJ Hill's he's not the same athlete as a pass rusher as Larry Ogunjobi, and that's where that value comes from. And if Hill is slightly less expensive than Ogunjobi, then I could just see the team just signing Hill to have more space elsewhere and still have a solid guy who's, productive in his own right. But I think honestly, if you let Larry O go, you're probably more pressed to find a young 3 technique to provide some of that explosion compared to if you keep Larry, and then you can find like maybe a more stable backup to him who's brings the same consistency as a run defender as BJ Hill. So this is a very interesting debate, and I don't think, Willie, you're off base at all. I think everyone can evidently see the explosion in athleticism in Larry O, and that's why it was so enticing to bring him in on a 1-year deal to see what he can do in a contract year. And unfortunately, I wish that he didn't get hurt, but it doesn't seem like that's going to affect his market very much.
God, how great were those 2 acquisitions for that team this year, between the trade for Hill and Larry O on a rental 1-year deal? I know Larry O, I got to go look up Hill stats. Larry O had 7 sacks on the regular season. Obviously, his postseason was cut short after that injury against the Raiders there, which really stung and sucked for everybody. But, man, Hill just came up with a number of big plays. Those guys were just great on the interior. What a couple of acquisitions those guys were for this team. And I would like to think there is a way that they can get both of them back, but I'm a little skeptical on that. I don't know. I don't think it's going to happen. Any others that we want to get? Go for it. Go for it.
One thing on that. One thing I think we overlook is that the Bengals did kind of like that. BJ Hill wasn't a known commodity coming in here, and Larry wasn't either. So that's not to say that, but regardless of the direction they go, I do feel good about this team's ability to go out and find, and they missed on it for the 2 years, and Gino being hurt and, getting older didn't help. But I do have confidence that whoever they let go, and they're going to, in all reality, they're probably going to let one of them walk and keep one of them. That just feels like what's going to happen. But I think they'll be able to find a name, and a young name, ideally, that can fill in that void.
Yeah, I agree with you. Any others to get to? We're over an hour here. Any others to get to before we hop on out of here? We got to a bunch, be it calls, texts, emails, live chats, all kinds of stuff. John, anything that's piquing your interest?
Yeah, I don't see any new ones in the live chat, but there was also some news that broke. There's going to be a new duo doing Monday Night Football. It's going to be this combination of these 2 guys with interesting backgrounds, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman. I'd be interested to see how that combination works on ESPN.
Really?
Yeah.
They're swapping over to ESPN, huh?
Oh, they worked with together before? They're not a brand new duo?
Wait, is Sean Payton on Monday Night Football too?
I don't know.
But
is he joining?
I'm excited. Yeah, it's going to be electric to see that duo together. I mean, 2 of the biggest names in broadcasting, one of baseball's finest, really.
Yeah, we'll see if it works, man. We'll see if it works. It's a big risk.
Yeah.
Big
what
risk.
A gamble from ESPN.
Yeah, that's big news. I didn't see that. Did that just come through?
It did. So I guess the Manning cast has some competition now.
Uh-oh. Well, we're going to get on out of here. Before we do, Willie, in case people are living under a rock and are not following you on Twitter and or checking out your material, be it your podcast stuff or anything else, where can people check out your stuff and get in touch with you and maybe debate you on some Larry O stuff on Twitter if they want to do that?
Yeah, you can find me at Willie_Lutz. And okay, so let's do this real fast. It's spelled Willie. There's no Y. There's none of that. Then there's an underscore, and then there's an LUTZ. It's not an S. I don't know where that came from, but that's been a thing lately. And neither of those it's with the IE at the Willie and a Z on the Lutz. So respect it. No, but you guys can check out Same Old Stripes podcast. Quentin Spain was on our show earlier this week. Great conversation.
That's awesome.
He may have just been big chilling, but that's another thing for another day. Quentin Spain definitely loves to relax. Not a man who's afraid to kick back and just breathe in and breathe out at all.
Okay.
So that's that's where you can find us on the Same Old Stripes podcast.
I love it. Yeah. Well, you do an awesome job there. And obviously you're, like I said, you're one of our favorite Twitter follows. And I know you and John had the awesome opportunity at the off-season jersey unveiling event and all that kind of stuff, which was kind of cool. So you are one of the great fan diplomats out there and fan accounts and content creators that we respect a lot. And we're sorry that it's been so long since we extended an invitation for you on the show, but we're glad you were able to make it happen. And I know you you had a conflict with your day job and whatnot, but appreciate you making time for us, my man.
Oh man, anytime. I love talking to you guys. Always great to talk back and forth with you guys on Twitter. If you guys don't like follow these guys, like I'm sure you do. You have to because you're like watching this, but make sure you do that. I mean, they're gonna plug me. I gotta plug them. So subscribe to this.
No, Willie, I got too many
5-star
followers.
reviews.
No,
Oh,
stop this.
No, you're getting more followers, John. I don't care. You and your
We're not having you back on until your
hair.
hair's back to normal. I'm telling you that right now.
Back to normal. What if this is normal?
I guess I don't know you at all.
Stimulation anyway.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, fellas.
Well, thanks, Willie. Appreciate it. And John, you have yourself a good weekend there too. Both you guys seem to be off to a good start to your weekends with the adult beverages that have been considered. There you go. Take a nice big swig of that bad boy. I love it. But have a good weekend, my man. This has been fun, and it was good getting Willie on. We weren't sure if he was going to join us or not, but that was a nice surprise.
Yeah, man. Willie is also a musician. Is
he?
Yeah, he was in a traveling band for I think a year or something. Like lived out of a van. He's a great dude. He's got a great story, and definitely check him out on Twitter as well. So yeah, have a good weekend, Anthony.
Awesome. You too, man. And thank you, everybody who submitted questions. This has been the Orange and Black Insider Bengals podcast listener questions live episode. If we did not get to your question, we apologize, but continue to shoot those over to us for future episodes. And we're going to continue bringing you all kinds of content, whether it's breaking news on the free agency front, whether it's our standard Wednesday show, our listener questions live, all that stuff. We're going to bring you all kinds of different stuff going forward on this show, as are the other guys, Ace Zim and Coach Matt Minnick on the Cincy Jungle podcast channel. So get that where you can, how you like to listen to it. We appreciate the support. Take care. Have a good weekend.